We're going to start by reviewing slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. Are you all familiar with y equals mx plus b? Okay, m represents the slope, which is how we move on the graph. M is how we move. What does b represent? The starting point, which is the y-intercept. And it is important to remember that that is the y-intercept. You start on the y-axis. Or, as I tell my Algebra B students, B is where you begin on the y-axis. For numbers 1 and 2, they're basically telling us, here's your slope, here's your y-intercept. But keep in mind, number 1, this would be the equation y equals 4x minus 1. So, b is negative 1. We are going to begin at negative 1 on the y-axis. Have we talked about these graphs and where the origin is on these graphs? I think we might have. Technically, we should draw in an x-axis and a y-axis. And the nice thing about these graphs is if we want to graph larger numbers than 10, we could move the origin. We could put the origin down here so that we could go up to an x value of 15 and a y value of 15. But if we don't have axes drawn, can we all agree that the center point is the origin? Okay, so if I look at your graph and I don't see an x and y axis drawn in, if I look at your graph and it looks like this, I'm going to assume that that center point is the origin. Agreed? Agreed. Okay, so negative 1 on the y-axis. Remember, your x-axis is here, your y-axis is the vertical axis. So negative 1 on the y-axis. A slope of 4 means rise 4 over 1. Up 4 over 1. Up 4 over 1. Draw in a line as straight as possible. Please use a straight edge like your ID or something to give a nice, straight, pretty line. It's also important to put arrowheads at the ends. So if you currently have a naked line that just ends in like a little stub, please put arrows at the ends of your little stubby line. Try number 2 on your own. This is what number 2 should look like because the y-intercept is at positive 5, not negative 5. I have had students do this before. What is wrong with what I just did? This is not B. That is the X-intercept, which is not the X-intercept of this graph. So do not start on the X-axis. Make sure you start on the Y-axis. So this is not where B goes. Okay, 3 and 4, why don't you try those quickly on your own? You probably don't even need to do both of them, so do them if you feel you need to. I'll throw the answers up here in like a minute. On your assignment, it is going to ask you to list the y-intercept and the slope, and it will have the parentheses already drawn for you, so they want you to write your y-intercept as an ordered pair. So remember, the y-intercept is the point 0, comma, whatever b is. Numbers 5 through 8, we're finding the slope in the y-intercept. We're going to do number 5 and number 8 first, and then we'll do 6 and 7. So number 5, what is the slope for number 5? 1. There's a 1 in front of that x. What is your y-intercept? 0. So your y-intercept is the point 0, 0. Now let's go to number 8. Y equals 7. What is the slope? The slope is the number in front of the x. What's the number in front of the x? There's not an x, which means the number in front of the x must be 0. Think about y equals a number. Ahoy, matey. I got the laugh again. It's like 4 times in one class. Awkward laughter. So this is a hoy situation. A horizontal line has 0 slope. So the middle part of hoy tells you exactly what the slope is supposed to be. And your y-intercept. What's the y-intercept of a horizontal line? 7, because the y value has to be 7. What if, let's say the equation is x equals 2. First of all, what would be the slope? Think about x equals. X equals is VUX, V, U. What does the U stand for in VUX? Undefined. The slope is undefined. And the y-intercept? There is none. The line x equals 2 is a vertical line that does not ever cross or touch the y-axis, so there is no y-intercept. 6 and 7. To find the slope in the y-intercept, we need to rearrange this equation so that it looks like y equals mx plus b. You practiced this on your assignment yesterday a little bit. Number 6, we would start by subtracting 2x on both sides. Keep in mind, you cannot combine negative 2x and 12. They are not like terms. Then we would need to divide everything by 3. Y equals negative 2/3 x plus 4. So what is your slope? And your y-intercept? 4. Try number 7 on your own. If we were graphing numbers 6 and 7, we could do exactly what we just did. Get it into slope-intercept form, graph the y-intercept, graph the slope, connect the points. Or 6 and 7 are both written in standard form. ax plus bx equals c. Another way to graph from standard form is to find the x-intercept and the y-intercept. Keep in mind the x-intercept has the coordinates x, 0. The x-intercept is where the graph crosses the x-axis. So it's whatever that x value is, 0. The y-intercept, as we have seen, has the coordinates 0, something. And this helps us in figuring out how to find the x and the y-intercept, which we'll get to in a minute. If you know the x and the y-intercept, put the x-intercept on the x-axis, y-intercept on the y-axis, connect the points. So they're telling us the x-intercept is 4. So right there. The y-intercept, if my graph would not go crazy, computer. The y-intercept is negative 2. If you wanted another point, you could count rise over run to figure out the slope and then make more points, or just use a nice straight edge to make a really accurate, beautiful straight line. The straight edge is really important when you're graphing in standard form because it's honestly difficult to get an accurate line with only 2 points. But if you use that straight edge, you're going to be more precise. We're going to skip number 10 and move to the next page. On 11 and 12, we are going to graph the equation using the intercepts. So, at the top of the page, you may want to write the x-intercept is some number, 0. To figure out what that number is, you plug in y equals 0. You put 0 into the other letter. To find the y-intercept. The y-intercept, the coordinates are 0, something. So we are going to plug in x equals 0. And there's a long way and a short way. I'll tell you the long way, but do the short way. Does that work? So 2x minus y equals 6. To find the x-intercept, we would need to substitute 0 in place of y. We'll take a look at what would happen to this equation if I were to put 0 in place of this y. What would happen to that term? It would disappear. So you'd have 2x equals 6 left over. So really what we are doing, and I will write it out for this problem, we are doing 2x minus 0 equals 6. But if you really look at that, it makes the y go away. You're trying to eliminate the other letter. So you have 2x equals 6. I would simply write 2x equals 6 as my first step. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So our x-intercept is the point 3, 0. Plot that on your x-axis. For the y-intercept, we need to plug 0 into the x. So technically, you should do 2 times 0 minus y equals 6. But what happens to that x term when you plug 0 into it? Poof, it just kind of goes away. So what I typically do is I cover up the x term and see what's left in my equation. Negative y equals 6. And that's what I would write as my first step. Negative y equals 6, which means that y equals negative 6. So my y-intercept is 0, negative 6. And then we would use a super straight edge to make a nice, pretty, accurate straight line. Try number 12 on your own, just so that I can make sure that you know what you're doing. For the x-intercept, you want to get rid of the other letter, so I basically just ignore that term. We have 2x equals negative 9. So x is negative 9/2, which is negative 4.5. So the coordinates of my x-intercept are negative 4.5, 0. For the y-intercept, we need to get rid of the x, so I just cover up that part. Negative 3y equals negative 9. So y equals positive 3. The coordinates of my y-intercept are 0, 3. On your assignment, it will ask you for the coordinates of your x-intercept and y-intercept. So you need to get in the habit of writing them as coordinates.